Young billionaire sees poor twin sisters isolated at school and asks, "Why aren't you eating?" They open their lunchboxes, and he starts to cry. The sun was shining brightly that autumn morning when Asher parked his ordinary, far from luxurious car 2 blocks from Westwood Elementary School. He was 25 years old, with brown hair that was always a bit messy and observant green eyes. His clothes, simple jeans and a blue shirt, gave no hint that he was the owner of an impressive fortune. Asher had been born into a wealthy family, but grew up hearing his mother say that money was only worthwhile when it helped someone. She had passed away 2 years ago, and ever since, he had been looking for ways to honor her teaching. He didn't want to appear in newspapers as the charitable young billionaire. He wanted to genuinely help, looking into the eyes of those in need. After talking with a former teacher, he decided to start with public schools in economically challenged neighborhoods. He didn't want to make large impersonal donations. He wanted to understand the reality, to learn real stories. "Good morning," he said to the school secretary with a gentle smile. "I'm Asher Collins. I arranged a visit with Principal Porter for today." The secretary, a woman with square glasses and a tired smile, nodded. "Oh yes, the potential donor for our food program. The principal is just finishing a meeting. He should be out in 10 minutes. Feel free to look around." Asher thanked her and walked through the hallways. The walls were decorated with colorful drawings and schoolwork, but the peeling paint and flickering lights revealed a lack of resources. He observed crowded classrooms, with hard-working teachers teaching with the little they had. The bell rang, announcing recess. Doors opened and children of various ages ran into the schoolyard, their voices and laughter echoing through the halls. Asher followed the flow, arriving at an open space with some time-worn playground equipment, concrete tables, and a small grassy area. Most of the children quickly formed groups, some playing ball, others on the seesaws, many sitting in clusters eating their snacks. But it was a detail in the corner of the yard that captured his attention. 2 little girls, perhaps 5 years old, sat alone on a concrete bench. They were absolutely identical, light blonde hair tied in simple ponytails, pale blue eyes that were almost gray, and school uniforms a bit too large. Each held a colorful lunchbox on her lap, but neither was eating. Something about that scene touched Asher. The girls were talking quietly to each other, occasionally glancing at the other groups of children. They didn't seem sad, but there was something in their eyes, a quiet acceptance that no child should have. Without realizing it, Asher approached them. He didn't want to startle them, so he walked slowly, a smile on his face. "Hello," he said softly, stopping a few feet away. The twins looked up at the same time, with identical expressions of curiosity and a slight apprehension. "Hi," they answered in unison, their voices barely a whisper. "My name is Asher. I'm visiting the school today," he explained, crouching down to their level. "You're sisters, aren't you?" The girl on the right nodded. "We're twins. I'm Lucy, and I'm Leah," the other completed, clutching her lunchbox to her chest. "It's snack time, isn't it?" Asher asked, noticing how both seemed to be protecting their lunchboxes. "Why aren't you eating?" Lucy and Leah exchanged a quick glance, as if silently deciding whether they could trust this stranger. There was a communication between them that went beyond words, something only twins seemed to understand. After a moment, Lucy gave a small nod, and both, simultaneously, opened their lunchboxes. They were empty, completely empty. Asher felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. The contrast between the colorful lunchboxes, decorated with stickers of stars and flowers, and the emptiness inside was devastating. "We bring the empty lunchboxes so no one thinks we don't have food," Leah explained, with a logic so simple and direct that it hurt even more. "Our mom doesn't have any money right now," Lucy added, closing her lunchbox as if guarding a precious secret. There was no shame in their voices, no self-pity, just the raw, pure acceptance of a reality they shouldn't have to know so soon. Asher swallowed hard, feeling his throat tighten. "I see," he managed to say, his voice betraying his emotion. "Do you always come to school without a snack?" "Sometimes we share a piece of bread," Lucy replied. "But there was nothing at home today," Leah completed. "Our mom said there will be food tomorrow," Lucy added quickly, as if wanting to make sure the stranger didn't think poorly of their mother. "She works very hard," Leah nodded firmly. Asher needed to step away. With a forced smile, he stood up. "Thank you for talking with me. You are very brave girls." Taking a few steps away from the bench, he turned his back and took a deep breath, trying to control the wave of emotion rising within him. He didn't want to cry in front of them. They didn't need the burden of a stranger's pity, but he couldn't hold it back. Silent tears streamed down his face as he looked up at the sky, trying to compose himself. His entire life of privilege flashed before his eyes. How many times had he complained about something as trivial as not liking the food served? How many choices had he always had, while these children pretended to have the basics to avoid humiliation? Wiping away the tears, Asher took another deep breath and made a decision. This wasn't just about giving food to two hungry children, it was about dignity, about doing something tangible that would change a reality, even if just for two people at that moment. Principal Porter finally found him in the yard. "Mr. Collins, sorry to keep you waiting. I see you're already getting to know our school." "Yes," Asher replied, his eyes still fixed on the twins. "Principal, who are those girls?" The principal followed his gaze. "Ah, the Morales twins, Lucy and Leah. They're in kindergarten, great students, very quiet. Their family, a difficult situation." The principal lowered his voice. "Their mother, Margaret, has been unemployed for a few months. She was a nurse's aide at the local hospital that closed down. She does what she can. The girl's grandmother, who helped a lot, passed away recently." Asher nodded slowly, absorbing the information. "About the food program we discussed on the phone," the principal began. "If we could secure funding for—" "We're going to do it," Asher interrupted, "but I need a few days to get everything set up legally. In the meantime, what time do the children get out of school?" An hour later, Asher was waiting on the sidewalk across from the school. He had gone to a nearby deli and bought fresh sandwiches, fruit, natural juices, and homemade cookies. Nothing extravagant or flashy. He didn't want to humiliate the girls with a display of wealth. The bell rang, and children began to stream out of the gates, some meeting parents, others walking in groups. A few minutes later, he saw Lucy and Leah walking out hand in hand, their empty lunchboxes swinging in their other hands. Asher approached calmly. The girls recognized him immediately, stopping with curious expressions. "Hello again," he said, smiling. "I was thinking, I ended up buying way too much lunch for myself, and I hate to waste food. Would you be willing to share it with me?" Lucy and Leah looked at each other again with that silent communication. "We're not supposed to take things from strangers," Leah said carefully. "Our teacher always says that," Lucy added. Asher smiled, appreciating their caution. "You are absolutely right. You should never take things from strangers. How about this? We can sit on that bench over there in plain sight of everyone, and I can introduce myself better. Then you can decide." The girls considered the proposal. "Okay," Lucy finally decided, "but we'll stay where Mrs. Peterson can see us." She pointed to a teacher supervising the student dismissal. "Perfect," Asher agreed. They walked to a wooden bench under a tree, still clearly visible from the school entrance. Asher sat down, leaving enough space so the girls wouldn't feel uncomfortable. "So, my name is Asher Collins. I'm 25, and I grew up not too far from here. I'm visiting schools because I want to help kids get access to important things, like food and school supplies." The twins listened attentively, their expressions serious, as if evaluating every word. "Why do you want to help?" Leah asked directly. The question caught Asher by surprise. It wasn't the kind of question he expected from a 5-year-old. Because I have more than I need, and it's not fair that some people have so much while others don't have enough." "Our grandma used to say life isn't fair," Lucy commented, swinging her little legs that didn't reach the ground. "And it isn't," Asher agreed. "But we can try to make it a little fairer, don't you think?" The girls considered his answer. "I guess so," Leah said finally. "You seem nice," Lucy decided. Asher smiled, relieved, and opened the bag he had brought. "I have turkey and cheese sandwiches, apples, orange juice, and some chocolate chip cookies. What would you prefer?" "Can we really choose?" Leah asked, her light-colored eyes wide. "Of course," Asher replied, feeling that tightness in his chest again. The girls chose their snacks carefully, as if each item were a treasure. They ate slowly at first, almost timidly, but soon they were devouring the food with the natural appetite of children who hadn't been eating properly for some time. No one spoke much during the impromptu snack. It wasn't necessary. There was a comfortable silence between them, occasionally broken by simple questions about favorite colors or school subjects. The girls shared that they loved to draw and dreamed of having a kitten. They mentioned that their mother told them stories every night, even when she was very tired. Asher listened to every word with genuine attention, sensing the love and admiration they had for their mother, despite the difficulties. When they finished eating, the sun was already beginning to set. Asher packed the empty wrappers back into the bag. "Do you live far from here?" he asked, concerned that they were alone. "Not too far," Lucy answered. "We walk." "It's only 3 blocks, Leah added. "I see," Asher said. "Well, it was a pleasure meeting you today." The girls smiled shyly. "Thanks for the snack," said Lucy. "It was really yummy," Leah added. They stood up, adjusting their backpacks and empty lunchboxes. Before turning to leave, Leah looked at Asher with curious eyes. "Are you coming back tomorrow?" The question, so simple and direct, held a world of hope that hit Asher with full force. "Yes," he replied without hesitation. "I'll be here again tomorrow." The twins smiled, identical, small, sincere smiles, and walked away hand in hand. Asher watched them until they turned the corner, lost in thought. That chance encounter had changed something inside him. It wasn't just about charity or a good deed. It was about real human connection, about seeing beyond the statistics and reports on child poverty, and seeing the faces, the stories, the small empty lunchboxes carried with so much pride. Walking back to his car, Asher was already planning the next day, the next snack, and how he could truly make a difference in these girls' lives without hurting their dignity or their mothers. A few hours ago, he was just a rich young man trying to do good deeds. Now he was someone with a clear purpose. Lucy and Leah Morales would not be carrying empty lunchboxes for much longer. The alarm went off at 5:30, but Asher was already awake. He had slept little, his mind occupied with images of empty lunchboxes and blue-gray eyes that hid so much dignity in such small bodies. In his spacious kitchen, something unprecedented was happening. The young billionaire, who usually had meals prepared by private chefs, was making sandwiches with his own hands. He had researched nutritious lunches for kids online and bought fresh ingredients the night before. "I hope they like peanut butter," he murmured to himself, carefully spreading the paste on slices of whole wheat bread, "and that they aren't allergic." He added thin slices of banana to one and strawberry jam to the other. Every movement was deliberate, almost reverent. Never before had a simple sandwich meant so much. He completed the lunches with bright red apples, small cartons of natural juice, carrot sticks, and small containers of hummus. As a final touch, some homemade-style cookies he had bought at a local bakery. He wrapped each item carefully in colorful paper, placing them in bags decorated with stars. Not too childish, but cheerful enough to bring a smile. The traffic was heavy that morning, but Asher left early. He didn't want to miss the girls for any reason. He parked in the same spot as the day before and walked to the school entrance, the 2 lunch bags swinging in his hand. The school was slowly coming to life. Buses arriving, parents dropping off their children in a hurry, teachers carrying materials. Asher chose a discreet spot near the main gate, where he could see everyone entering without drawing too much attention. 30 minutes passed. Most of the children had already gone inside when Asher finally spotted them. Lucy and Leah were walking hand in hand, just like the day before. But something was different today. They were chatting animatedly, their colorful lunchboxes swinging. From where he stood, Asher could see the sparkle in their eyes. There was anticipation there. They were looking for him. When they finally saw him, they stopped for a moment. Then, without arranging it, they started running towards him, their blonde hair swinging like golden threads in the morning light. "Oh, you really came?" exclaimed Lucy, stopping a few feet from him. "You said you would," added Leah, a little more restrained, but with the same sparkle in her eyes. Asher knelt down to their level, smiling. Of course I came. I promised, didn't I? He looked at them both, noticing small details he hadn't before. Lucy had a tiny mole near her right eyebrow. Leah's hair was a millimeter shorter, perhaps trimmed to help tell them apart. Both wore the same simple, slightly oversized uniform, probably meant to last longer. We brought our lunchboxes today too, said Lucy, showing hers, decorated with stars. We thought maybe. Leah left the sentence unfinished, as if afraid to assume too much. Asher felt his heart ache again, but in a different way. There was hope in their eyes, hope that he had put there, and which was now his responsibility not to disappoint. Actually, he said, holding up the colorful bags, I brought something for you. The girl's eyes widened, shifting between the bags and Asher's face. For us? They asked in unison. And for you to put in your lunchboxes, Asher explained gently. May I? The twins nodded, opening their empty lunchboxes. With careful movements, Asher transferred the contents of the bags into the lunchboxes. The sandwiches wrapped in colorful paper, the fruits, the juices, the cookies, everything found its place in the lunchboxes that, until then, had only served as a disguise for hunger. I made different sandwiches for you to try, he explained, showing them the wrappers. This one has peanut butter and banana, and this one has cream cheese and jelly. If you don't like them, I can bring something else tomorrow. The girls looked at the contents of their lunchboxes as if they were beholding a treasure. Leah carefully touched a sandwich, as if to make sure it was real. There's so much, she murmured. Can we share with someone? Lucy asked, looking up at Asher. The question took him by surprise. These children, who barely had enough for themselves, were already thinking of sharing. Of course you can, he replied, feeling a wave of admiration. It's yours to do with as you please. The bell rang in the distance, announcing the start of classes. The girls closed their lunchboxes, now heavy with real food. They stood still for a moment, as if they didn't know exactly how to express what they were feeling. Then, without warning, Lucy stepped forward and hugged Asher tightly. A second later, Leah did the same. Little arms wrapped around his neck, with an intensity that said more than any words could. Thank you, Lucy whispered in his ear. Thank you so much, Leah echoed, her voice almost breaking. Asher felt a lump in his throat. He hugged them back, carefully, feeling the fragility of those small bodies, and at the same time, the surprising strength that dwelled within them. The hug lasted only a few seconds, but for Asher it seemed to contain an eternity. When the girls pulled away, their faces were lit with smiles that seemed to transform them completely. You're going to be late, he reminded them gently. You'd better go. Will you be here after school? Leah asked, her light blue eyes full of hope. I will, Asher promised, right here. The twins nodded, satisfied with the promise. They took a few steps back, still looking at him, then turned and ran towards the school gate, their lunchboxes now swinging with purpose. Asher watched them until they disappeared inside the building. He was about to turn and leave when he noticed a woman watching him. It was a teacher, graying hair in a bun, thin-rimmed glasses, a kind but watchful expression. She approached with measured steps, studying him. Good morning, Asher greeted politely. Good morning, she replied. Forgive my curiosity, but I noticed your interaction with the Morales twins. Are you a relative? No, Asher answered honestly, just a friend. The teacher assessed him for a moment, as if deciding whether to believe him. I'm Mrs. Peterson, their teacher, she said finally. Lucy and Leah are wonderful students, very bright, but in recent months, since their grandmother passed, I've noticed changes, quieter, less engaged. She paused, looking in the direction the girls had disappeared. Today, however, they came into the classroom with a different energy. Smiles I haven't seen in months. The teacher turned her eyes back to Asher. They're different. Your presence is doing them good. There was an unasked question in her observation. Who was he and what were his intentions? Asher understood the concern. I met the girls yesterday by chance, and he explained. I realized they were going through a hard time. I just want to help, in the most respectful way possible. Mrs. Peterson nodded slowly. Their mother, Margaret, is an admirable woman. She's doing the impossible to keep those girls in school, but times have been tough since the hospital closed. I understand, Asher replied, taking in the information. I don't want to interfere or impose anything. Just ensure they have the basics while their mother finds a new path. Something in Asher's tone or words seemed to convince the teacher. Her posture relaxed slightly. Well, any help is welcome. Those girls deserve every chance in life. She checked her watch. I have to go, classes are starting. Of course, thank you for looking after them, Asher said sincerely. Mrs. Peterson smiled, a smile that spoke of years dedicated to children, of worries that went far beyond the classroom. It's good to see there are still people willing to make a difference. Mr. Asher. Just Asher. The teacher nodded, as if she understood his desire to remain somewhat anonymous. Well, Asher, I hope to see you again. With that, she turned and walked into the school, leaving Asher with his thoughts and a heart inexplicably lighter than it had been in a long time. The days passed, one after another, creating a routine that brought comfort to everyone. Every morning, Asher arrived at school early with lunchboxes filled with fresh food. Lucy and Leah would appear, their expressions lighting up when they saw him. At first shyly, then with growing confidence, the girls began to run to him as soon as they spotted him. Asher! Asher! The excited calls echoed through the schoolyard as the golden-haired twins ran towards him. Mrs. Peterson started waving to him every morning, a small gesture of acknowledgement and gratitude. Other teachers also noticed his constant presence, but kept a respectful distance, sensing the special bond that was forming. On that Thursday, 2 weeks after their first meeting, the sky was overcast and a light rain was falling. Asher waited in his usual spot, now protected by a large umbrella big enough for 3 people. Lucy and Leah arrived walking slowly, without their usual running. They were a little wet, sharing a thin jacket that barely protected them from the rain. Good morning, princesses, Asher greeted, concerned about their state. Don't you have raincoats? Leah shook her head. Yeah, we did. They got too small. Mommy said she'll buy new ones when she can, Lucy added, without any hint of complaint. Asher sheltered them under his umbrella, handing them a small pack of paper towels to dry their faces and hair. How did you get to school today? It's been raining since early this morning. Walking, like always, Leah replied, rubbing her hair with the towel. We don't mind the rain, Lucy said bravely, though a sneeze betrayed her words. Asher frowned but didn't comment. Instead, he handed them the day's lunchboxes, today filled with chicken sandwiches, yogurt, fresh grapes, and small cinnamon muffins. And I loved yesterday's muffins, Leah commented, opening her lunchbox to peek at the contents. Me too. Mrs. Peterson asked for the recipe, Lucy laughed. She said she's never seen us eat so well. Asher smiled, happy to see how they were becoming more talkative, more confident each day. It wasn't just the food, it was the certainty, the stability his presence brought. Ty, what are you going to do in school today? He asked, crouching to fix the wet jacket slipping off Lucy's shoulders. We're going to learn about animals, Lucy replied excitedly. And then we have music class, Leah added. We love music. Our grandma used to sing to us every night, Lucy said suddenly, her voice becoming a little lower. It was the first time they had mentioned their grandmother spontaneously. Asher noticed the shift in tone and gave them space to continue. She sang old songs, Leah continued, looking at the ground, and told stories about when she was a little girl. There was one about a blue rabbit that was our favorite, Lucy added. Asher nodded gently. So she sounds like she was a wonderful grandmother. She was, Leah confirmed, and she made the best cookies in the world. Even better than yours, Lucy added quickly. Then her eyes widened. Sorry, Asher laughed. I'm sure she did. Nobody makes cookies like Grandma's. The twins relaxed again, their small hands gripping their lunchboxes. So why did she live with you? Asher asked carefully. Lucy nodded. Since we were born, she took care of us while Mommy worked. She slept in the room with us, Leah said, and she always left a little light on because I'm afraid of the dark. When she got sick, Mommy had to miss work to take care of her, Lucy recounted. Then that's why she lost her job at the hospital. Asher listened attentively, each word painting a clearer picture of their situation. Your mom was a nurse, right? A nurse's aide, Leah corrected with pride. She wore a light blue uniform and helped sick people. She saved lives, Lucy declared with absolute conviction. The bell rang, but none of them moved. The rain continued to fall softly around the umbrella, creating a small bubble of intimacy. "Are you enjoying school?" Asher asked, reluctant to end the conversation. The twins exchanged a look, that silent communication they always shared before revealing something important. "We love school," Lucy began. "But we might not be able to come anymore," Leah completed, her voice just a whisper. Asher felt his heart stop for a second. "What do you mean?" Lucy bit her lip, looking around as if checking if anyone could hear. "We heard Mommy talking on the phone last night. She was crying," Leah added, her clear eyes reflecting the painful memory. "Mommy said that if things don't get better, we might have to leave school," Lucy finally revealed, her voice so low Asher had to lean in to hear. "She said she can't pay the rent anymore," Leah explained, "and that we might have to go live with Aunt Martha. She lives really far away," Lucy added. "In another city." The words fell heavily between them, colder than the rain surrounding them. Asher tried to keep his expression calm, but inside he felt a storm of emotions. "Did you talk to your mum about this?" he asked gently. Both shook their heads. "We weren't supposed to be listening," Leah admitted. "It was after she put us to bed. We don't want her to know that we know," Lucy explained. "She's already sad enough." The second bell rang, more urgent now. Mrs. Peterson appeared at the door, signaling to the girls. "You need to go," Asher said, adjusting the backpacks on their shoulders. "Don't worry, okay? Everything is going to be all right." The twins nodded, not entirely convinced but comforted by the certainty in his voice. "Will you be here after school?" Lucy asked, as she did every day. "Always," Asher replied. "Now go. I don't want you to be late." They ran to the entrance, turning to wave one last time before disappearing inside the building. Asher stood still in the rain, the umbrella forgotten in his hand. The girl's revelation echoed in his mind, the possibility of Lucy and Leah leaving school, being torn from the only stable environment they knew, going far away. No, he wouldn't allow it. The decision crystallized in his chest, strong and unshakable. From the moment he saw those empty lunchboxes, Asher knew he wanted to help. But now, faced with the possibility of losing them, he realized his involvement had become much deeper than he had imagined. It was no longer just about ensuring they had food. It was about giving them a real chance in life, the opportunity to grow up in a stable environment with a quality education. The rain was falling harder now, but Asher barely noticed. His mind was already drawing up plans, possibilities, solutions. He needed to meet the girl's mother. He needed to understand exactly what the situation was, and most importantly, he needed to act fast. Pulling his phone from his pocket, he cancelled all his meetings for the day. There was something much more important to resolve. Walking back to his car, Asher made a decision. That afternoon, he would visit the twins' home. It was time to meet Margaret Morales and offer help in a way that preserved her dignity. Lucy and Leah would not be leaving school. He would not let that happen. The rain had stopped by the time Asher parked on the narrow street of the residential neighborhood. It was a simple place, with small, old houses, many of them in need of repair. The cracked sidewalks had small puddles where the morning rain still lingered. Asher looked at the piece of paper in his hand. After dropping the girls at school, he had spoken with Mrs. Peterson, explaining his concern. The teacher, though initially hesitant, ended up providing the Morales family's address when she understood his intentions were genuine. "Third house on the right, after the corner grocery store," he murmured to himself, walking slowly. Every house he passed told a different story of struggle. Windows patched with cardboard, doors that didn't close properly, roofs with missing shingles. But there were also signs of dignity, lovingly cared for potted plants, clean though faded curtains, toys organized in small yards. The Morales house was one of the smallest on the street, a simple one-story building with peeling light blue paint on the walls. There was a tiny front garden where a few resilient flowers grew amidst a poorly maintained lawn. A rusty children's bicycle was leaning against the porch, likely a donation or a second-hand purchase for the twins. Asher stopped before the low metal gate and took a deep breath. This moment was crucial. He needed to approach the situation with respect, without making Margaret feel diminished or treated like a charity case. He opened the gate, which creaked in protest, and walked to the door. He could hear the low sound of a radio coming from inside. He knocked gently 3 times. Hurried footsteps, the sound of the radio turning down, and then the door opened just enough to reveal part of a woman's face. "Yes?" The voice was cautious but polite. "Good afternoon," Asher said with a gentle smile. "My name is Asher Collins. I know your daughters, Lucy and Leah." The door opened a little wider, revealing a woman in her 30s. It was easy to see where the twins had inherited their features. The same blonde hair, though hers was tied in a simple bun. The same light-colored eyes, now wide with surprise and confusion. She wore faded jeans and a simple button-down shirt. Her hands, Asher noticed, were those of someone accustomed to hard work, with small calluses and dry skin. "You know my daughters?" she repeated, her posture immediately becoming stiffer, more protective. "Yes, we met at the school a few weeks ago. I've been bringing them snacks," Asher explained, keeping a respectful distance. "I'm also a friend of Mrs. Peterson." Margaret's expression softened slightly upon hearing the teacher's name, but her eyes still studied Asher cautiously. "The girls mentioned you," she said finally. "The snack man." There was a hint of wounded pride in her voice that Asher understood immediately. What mother would want to admit that a stranger was feeding her children? "I'd like to talk to you if you have a moment," Asher requested. "It's important." Margaret hesitated, looking past him as if searching for someone else on the street, perhaps wondering if he represented some official authority. After a moment of consideration, she opened the door wider. "You can come in, but I only have a few minutes. I'm sending out resumes for jobs." The inside of the house was as small as it suggested from the outside, but impeccably clean and organized. The living room, which also served as a dining room, had an old sofa with mended cushions, a table with 4 mismatched chairs, and a simple bookshelf with a few books and some picture frames. The walls, though peeling in some places, were decorated with colorful drawings made by the twins. "Please, sit," Margaret offered, indicating the sofa. Asher noticed that she remained standing, as if wanting to maintain some control over the situation. Her eyes, though tired, were observant and intelligent. "Thank you for having me," he began. "As I said, I've spent some time with Lucy and Leah over the past few weeks. They are extraordinary girls." An involuntary smile softened Margaret's tense face. "They are, aren't they? So smart, so good." "They really are," Asher agreed. "And that's why I'm here today. They mentioned that they might have to leave the school." Margaret's posture stiffened again. "They heard that. I thought they were asleep." She ran a hand over her face, a gesture of frustration and exhaustion. "I didn't want them to know yet." "Kids notice more than we think," Asher said gently. Margaret nodded, crossing her arms. "Why does this concern you? No offense, but we barely know each other." It was a fair question. Asher decided to be completely honest. "I met your daughters by chance. I saw them at recess with empty lunchboxes. When I asked why they weren't eating, they showed me that their lunchboxes had nothing inside. They explained that they brought empty lunchboxes, so no one would know they didn't have food." Margaret closed her eyes for a moment, the pain evident on her face. When she opened them again, there was a sheen of unshed tears. "They did that, my God." Her voice faltered. "I told them it was just for a little while, that we'd have enough food soon. They didn't speak out of shame, Mrs. Morales. They spoke because they are honest and because they trust that adults can solve problems. And that's what I've come to do today." Margaret stared at him, a mix of confusion and suspicion in her gaze. "What do you mean?" Asher took a deep breath and said in a calm but determined voice, "Lucy and Leah are not leaving school. I'm going to make sure they can continue their studies." The silence that followed was profound. Margaret watched him as if trying to decipher a complex puzzle. "You don't even know us," she said finally, her voice a mixture of disbelief and distrust. "Why would you do that?" Because your daughters deserve every opportunity they can get. Because education is the foundation of everything. And because... Asher hesitated, thinking of the best way to explain without sounding condescending. Because I am in a position to help, and I want to. Margaret moved to the window, looking outside as if the answers might be there. When she turned back, her face showed the internal conflict she was facing. The pride of a mother who had always cared for her daughters alone versus the relentless reality of her current situation. "You don't understand," she said, her voice breaking. "It's not just the tuition. They are going without lunch, without proper uniforms. It's even hard to afford transportation. I thought about taking them out of school to protect them, so they wouldn't be humiliated for not having what other children have." The words came out in a torrent, as if a dam had broken. Margaret wasn't crying, but her entire body seemed to carry the weight of that confession. "Since my mother died, I've tried everything. Cleaning jobs, temporary work, extra shifts, but the money is never enough. The rent went up. My mother's medical bills used up our savings, and now..." She made a vague gesture indicating the house around them. "Now we're about to lose even this." Asher listened in silence, respecting the courage that revelation required. "My sister Martha offered to take us in. She lives in a small town 4 hours from here. It's not ideal. The schools there aren't as good, but at least we'd have a roof over our heads." She finally sat down, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I never imagined I'd get to this point. I've always worked hard. I've always taken care of my daughters, and now I can't even ensure they have food in their lunchboxes." The last sentence was spoken with such pain that Asher felt his own chest tighten. This was not a woman looking for charity. She was an exhausted warrior after a battle fought too long, and for too long alone. "Mrs. Morales," he said softly. "Margaret." "May I call you that?" She nodded, discreetly wiping away a stubborn tear that had escaped. "Margaret, I'm not here to judge or to offer temporary solutions. I'm here because your daughters have touched my heart in a way I can't explain. They are special, and they deserve the chance to stay in the school they love, near teachers who care about them." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "I'm not asking you to give up your role or your authority as a mother. I'm just offering to be a support during this difficult time. People used to say it takes a village to raise a child. Let me be a part of that village for Lucy and Leah." Margaret studied him for a long moment, as if trying to see beyond his words. "Why?" she asked finally. "Why do you care so much?" It was a question Asher had been asking himself. Why had these two specific girls captured his heart in such a way? "Because they reminded me what's important in life," he answered honestly. "Because when I saw the dignity with which they face hardships that no child should have to face, something changed inside me. And because..." He hesitated, wondering if he should share something so personal, but decided that sincerity was necessary at that moment. "Because I was also in a vulnerable position once, and when I was younger, someone reached out a hand to me when I needed it most. Now it's my turn to do the same." The silence that followed was different, no longer tense, but contemplative. When Margaret finally spoke, her voice was calmer. "How do you plan to help exactly?" "To start, I'd like to ensure the school tuition is paid, as well as the uniforms and transportation. I'd also like to help with basic necessities while you find a new job." Margaret opened her mouth as if to protest, but Asher continued, "Not as charity, Margaret, as an investment in their future. And with your consent and supervision every step of the way." She closed her eyes for a moment, as if fighting an internal battle. When she opened them again, there was a mixture of resignation and relief in her gaze. "They really like you, you know. They talk about their friend Asher's all the time. How you make the best sandwiches, how you listen to their stories." She gave a small, sad smile. "I admit I was jealous at first." "I would never try to take your place," Asher assured her quickly. "You are their hero. They speak of their mother with such pride." That seemed to surprise Margaret. "Even with all this, with all my failings, especially with all this, they see how you fight for them every single day." A tear finally escaped, rolling down Margaret's weary face. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing enough." "You're doing everything you can," Asher said gently. and now you don't have to do it alone." He leaned forward a little, his eyes meeting hers directly. "Lucy and Leah have you, Margaret. They always have. And now they have me too." The simplicity of that statement seemed to finally break down the last barriers. Margaret covered her face with her hands and for the first time allowed herself to cry openly, not tears of self-pity, but of relief, the kind of crying that comes when you finally realize you are no longer alone in a seemingly impossible fight. Asher waited patiently, offering a handkerchief he took from his pocket. When she finally calmed down, her eyes were red, but there was something new in her gaze, a small flame of hope that hadn't been there before. "The girls will be home in an hour," she said, checking the clock on the wall. "Would you like to stay and meet them formally?" "I'm sure they'd be happy," Asher smiled. "I'd love to." In the weeks that followed, a new routine was established. Asher not only continued to bring snacks for the twins, but he also began to bring basic groceries to the house: rice, beans, milk, soap. Nothing excessive or luxurious, just what was necessary to ensure the family had the basics while Margaret continued her job search. At first, Margaret tried to refuse. Her pride, the last thing she had left intact, fought against accepting help. But as she saw the care and respect with which Asher approached the situation, always asking first, never imposing, always discreet, she gradually lowered her defenses. On a Thursday afternoon, while the twins played in the small backyard, Margaret and Asher talked in the kitchen. He had brought some children's books that the girls had mentioned wanting to read and was helping put away a small grocery haul. "I have an interview tomorrow," Margaret commented, putting away a box of cereal. "At a private clinic. It's not exactly like the hospital, but it would be a new start." "That's great," Asher replied sincerely. "I'm sure you'll do well." Margaret smiled, something she was doing more often lately. "The girls are different, you know? Happier, more confident. Mrs. Peterson said Lucy even volunteered to read aloud in class yesterday. She never did that before." Asher nodded, thinking about how the twins seemed to blossom a little more each day. It wasn't just the material security, it was knowing they had people to rely on who cared. "I always thought you're supposed to be ashamed to need help," Margaret continued, closing the pantry door, now stocked with simple but nutritious food. "But seeing how this is positively affecting my daughters, how much happier they are, I realize that maybe pride is a luxury a mother can't afford." She turned to Asher, her light eyes, so much like her daughter's, shining with restrained emotion. "Thank you," she said simply. "Not just for the food or the money, but for seeing my daughters the way I see them. As valuable human beings with potential, with dreams. Not as charity cases." Asher felt a lump in his throat. "That's exactly how I see them, Margaret, as two bright stars who deserve the chance to light up the world." From the backyard, the laughter of Lucy and Leah echoed, a sound that was becoming more frequent in that little blue house. A sound that Asher thought was worth more than all the riches he possessed. The days passed, turning into weeks. Summer was beginning to show signs of its arrival. The days grew longer, the sun stronger. The trees around Westwood Elementary displayed all their vibrant green leaves. For Asher, each morning began the same way, waking up early, preparing special lunches and driving to the school to meet Lucy and Leah. But the routine, instead of becoming monotonous, gained new meaning each day. The twins were different. Their clothes were now the right size, their blonde hair always neatly combed in identical ponytails or simple braids that Margaret had learned to do by watching online tutorials. Their smiles were more frequent and spontaneous, their laughter freer. Even their posture had changed. They walked more upright, with confidence, no longer with that expression of someone trying to go unnoticed. Margaret had gotten the job at the private clinic, and although her salary wasn't yet enough to cover all expenses, the combination with Asher's discreet help ensured the family's basic needs were met. The change in the mother was also visible. The dark circles under her eyes had diminished. The constant exhaustion gave way to renewed energy, and her smile, so much like her daughter's, appeared more often. On that Thursday morning, Asher arrived at the school at the usual time, shortly before 8. The sky was especially blue, without a single cloud in sight, promising a warm day. He leaned against his usual tree near the main gate and waited. In recent days, he had noticed a different behavior in the girls, whispers between them, stifled giggles when he approached, conspiratorial looks that suggested a shared secret. Whenever he asked what they were up to, they would laugh and say, "It's a surprise." At 7:45, as always, Margaret pulled up in her old car in front of the school. The vehicle, a donation from one of the clinic's patients, still didn't run perfectly. It made strange noises when starting, and the passenger door needed to be closed with extra force, but it allowed her to take her daughters to school before going to work. It was a small achievement that had brought a new gleam of pride to her tired eyes. The twins jumped out of the back seat, adjusting their uniforms, new, the right size, with their names embroidered on the blouses to avoid confusion. Both held their backpacks and lunchboxes firmly, now always filled with nutritious food that Margaret made sure to prepare, with occasional surprise gifts that Asher added without their knowledge. Margaret waved to Asher from the car window with a knowing smile. They had developed a mutual respect in recent weeks, not quite friendship yet, but a partnership based on the twins' well-being. She honked softly and drove off to work, while the girls ran towards Asher. "Good morning, princesses," Asher greeted them, crouching down to their level. But something was different today. Instead of the usual rush to hug him, the girls stopped a few steps away, exchanging nervous glances. Lucy tucked her hair behind her ear, a gesture Asher had learned meant she was anxious. Leah was biting her lower lip, rocking back and forth in her new sneakers. "Is everything okay?" he asked, feeling a pang of concern. "How did something happen?" Lucy stepped forward, holding a white envelope with both hands. Her clear eyes shifted between the envelope and Asher's face. "We made something for you," she said, her small voice trembling slightly with emotion. "In art class," Leah added, moving closer to her sister as if for support. "The teacher said we could make a drawing for someone special," Lucy continued. "And we chose you," Leah completed. Asher smiled, genuinely touched. "For me?" "Really?" The twins nodded in unison, their expressions as serious as if they were about to hand over a valuable treasure. "The teacher said it was very beautiful," Lucy commented, finally holding out the envelope. "She helped us write the message without any mistakes, but the idea was ours," Leah added quickly. "All ours." Asher accepted the envelope with the same care he would give a precious object. It was a simple white envelope, but decorated on the edges with small round colorful drawings of stars and hearts, clearly made by the girls' own hands. There were smudges of ink here and there, and a small blur in the corner where someone, probably Leah, who was more impatient, had touched it before the ink dried. "Can I open it now?" he asked, already knowing the answer from the way they watched him anxiously, leaning forward as if to push him to hurry the process. "Yes," they exclaimed together, their eyes shining with expectation. "Open it." Careful not to tear any of the drawings on the edges, Asher opened the envelope. Inside was a slightly larger sheet of paper, folded in half. As he unfolded it, he felt his breath catch for a moment. It was a drawing made with colored pencils and markers. In the center, 3 figures sat on a brown wooden bench, a man with brown hair wearing a blue shirt, his favorite one which he wore often, and 2 small blonde girls holding hands. The details surprised Asher. Lucy had drawn her own mole near her eyebrow, and Leah had included the new star earrings she had gotten for her birthday. Behind them, a huge sun with yellow and orange rays spread across the blue sky, with a smile drawn in the center, as if the sun itself were happy about that moment. On the ground, colorful flowers of all kinds grew around the bench, some almost reaching the height of the girls in the drawing. Every detail had the mark of childish dedication, from the carefully drawn shoelaces to the exaggerated smiles on their faces. There was something in the simplicity of the drawing that perfectly captured the essence of the moments they shared. But what really made his heart ache was what was written in the bottom right corner. In childish letters, a little crooked but perfectly legible, colored alternately in purple and green, Lucy and Leah's favorite colors, were the words, "You make everything better." Asher stood motionless for a moment, absorbing the impact of those simple words. He who had more money than he could spend in a lifetime, who had received expensive gifts and impressive accolades, had never felt the weight of a gift like this, a piece of paper with colorful drawings and 5 words written by the small hands of 5-year-olds. "Do you like it?" Leah asked, her voice betraying concern at his prolonged silence. "Is it weird? If you don't like it, we can make another one," Lucy added quickly, already looking disappointed. "We can draw better." "It's just that the bench is crooked," Leah explained, pointing to the small imperfection in the drawing. "And your hair isn't that spiky, I know." Asher swallowed hard, fighting the emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. He felt a warmth in his chest, a mixture of gratitude and affection so intense it almost hurt. "It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received in my life," he said finally, his voice slightly choked. "I'm speechless." The girls' faces lit up instantly, like Christmas lights being turned on. "Really?" Lucy asked, her eyes wide. "You're not just being polite?" questioned Leah, always the more suspicious of the two. "Absolutely true," Asher confirmed, carefully touching the drawing as if it were a priceless work of art. "I'm going to frame it and put it in my office. That way, whenever I'm working, I'll look at it and remember you." Without warning, Leah stepped forward and hugged him tightly, her small arms wrapping around his neck. The scent of strawberry shampoo and the warmth of that fragile but full of life little body enveloped him. "We love you, Asher," she whispered in his ear, with the direct honesty only children possess. Lucy joined the hug a second later, creating a knot of arms and emotions that Asher wished he could freeze in time. He felt their weight, the implicit trust in that gesture, the purity of affection offered without reservation. "I love you guys too," he replied, the words coming out naturally without filters or hesitation. Because it was true, at some point, without realizing it, these 2 little golden-haired warriors had conquered a permanent space in his heart. The school bell rang, breaking the moment. Reluctantly, the girls pulled away. "I have to put this on my desk," Asher said, carefully holding the drawing. "Just so I can see it every day and remember that I have 2 talented artists as friends." "Yes," Lucy agreed enthusiastically, "and when we make more, you can put them there too." "I'll make a new one tomorrow," Leah promised. "With a dog too, because you said you like dogs." Asher smiled, carefully folded the drawing, and put it back in the envelope. "I can't wait to see it. Now go, I don't want you to be late." The girls nodded, picking up their lunchboxes. Before running to the gate, they looked back at him one more time, as if wanting to memorize his image. "See you after school?" Lucy asked, as she always did. "I'll be here," Asher promised, as he always replied. He watched as they ran into the building, their blonde hair bouncing with each step, uniforms impeccable, their steps light and confident, so different from the 2 shy girls with empty lunchboxes he had met weeks ago. When they disappeared, he looked again at the envelope in his hands. "How you make everything better." Funny, Asher thought, how 5 simple words could capture exactly what these girls had done for him. They had made everything better. Much better. The month of June arrived, bringing warmer days and bluer skies. Asher's routine now included not only daily visits to the school but also regular visits to the Morales' home. What had started as a one-time help had turned into a constant presence in the small family's life. On that Saturday afternoon, Asher drove his car through the familiar streets of the neighborhood, a package on the passenger seat. He had found an educational game that helped develop reading and math skills, perfect for children the twins' age. He smiled as he imagined their reaction. Lucy would probably analyze every detail of the box before opening it, while Leah would try to go straight for the pieces, impatient to begin. He parked in front of the blue house, noticing the small improvements that appeared each week. The front yard was better cared for, with new flowers planted in colorful pots. The rusty children's bicycle had been replaced by 2 smaller ones, one pink and one purple, parked neatly on the small porch. The house itself seemed more alive, with new curtains on the windows and the front door's paint touched up. Small changes that reflected the gradual rebirth of that family. He had barely closed the gate behind him when he heard the excited shouts, "Asher's here! Asher's here!" The door flew open and the twins shot out towards him, their blonde hair flying like golden flags in the wind. They wore simple summer clothes, denim shorts and colorful t-shirts, and were barefoot. "We were making cookies with Mommy," Lucy announced, clinging to his right leg. There's flour everywhere, Leah added, holding his left hand. I can see that, Asher laughed, noticing the white smudges on their faces and clothes. You look like two little ghosts. The girls laughed, pulling him inside the house. The sweet smell of vanilla and cinnamon filled the air, mixed with the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Margaret, he called out, as he was dragged by their small hands. In the kitchen, she replied. We're in full cookie operation. Enter at your own risk. The kitchen, though small, was bright with sunlight streaming through the window. Margaret stood at the counter, kneading a portion of dough. There was flour in her blonde hair, tied in a messy bun, and on the tip of her nose. Seeing him, she smiled. A relaxed, genuine smile, so different from the tense expression of their first meeting. Welcome to the chaos, she joked. The chef's assistants are very enthusiastic, but not very organized. I made this one, exclaimed Lucy, pointing to a cookie in the shape of what looked like a cat, or maybe an elephant. And I made a star, Leah added, showing a shape with 5 irregular points. Impressive, Asher praised, placing the package on the table. I brought something for you, but we can look at it after the kitchen work is done. The girls' eyes lit up at the sight of the wrapping, but they agreed with the suggestion. Soon Asher was wearing a borrowed apron, helping to cut shapes in the cookie dough while the twins seriously debated whether a round cookie could be called a circle or a pea ball. There was something deeply comforting about that domestic scene. The warmth of the oven, the children's laughter, the soft music playing on the small radio on top of the fridge. For Asher, whose life had always been marked by formal meetings and vast empty spaces, that cramped and lively kitchen felt like an oasis. After the last batch of cookies went into the oven, Margaret suggested they have coffee, juice for the girls, in the living room while they waited. The twins ran ahead, eager to open the gift Asher had brought. It was then, while drying his hands on a towel, that Asher noticed something he hadn't before. On the small bookshelf in the living room, among some worn-out books and plants in simple pots, was a silver picture frame. The frame was simple, but it seemed to be the best cared-for item in the house, dust-free, positioned in a prominent place. In the photo, a middle-aged woman smiled at the camera. She had grey hair cut to shoulder length, round-rimmed glasses, and kind eyes that seemed to smile as much as her lips. Something about that look seemed strangely familiar to Asher. He slowly approached the bookshelf, as if drawn by an invisible force. He carefully picked up the picture frame, studying the woman's face. Margaret entered the room carrying a tray with cups. I see you found my mother, she commented, placing the tray on the coffee table. This is your mother? Asher asked, still staring at the photograph. Yes, Margaret replied, approaching. That's my mom. Evelyn Carter. It was taken a couple of years before she got sick. Asher felt a shock run through his body, as if he'd been doused with ice water. The picture frame trembled slightly in his hands. Evelyn Carter, he repeated, his voice almost a whisper. From Hillside School, the 5th grade teacher. It was Margaret's turn to look surprised. Yes. How do you know? Asher finally tore his eyes away from the photograph to face Margaret. His face had lost some of its color, and his eyes shone with restrained emotion. She was my teacher, he said, the words coming out with difficulty. In 5th grade, almost 20 years ago. Silence fell over the room, broken only by the distant laughter of the twins in the next room. Margaret looked at Asher with wide eyes, trying to process the information. She was my teacher, Asher repeated, looking at the photo again. The first person who believed in me, who saw past the troubled kid all the other teachers had given up on. He slowly sat on the sofa, still holding the picture frame. Long-buried memories resurfaced, of a rich but neglected boy with behavioral problems who found in a patient teacher the guidance he never had at home. She changed my life, he continued, almost talking to himself. She stayed after school with me. She taught me to channel my anger. She made me believe I could be more. A tear escaped, rolling slowly down his face. Asher wiped it away quickly, but couldn't contain the emotion that was overwhelming him. Now I understand, he murmured. The reason I'm here. It was her. All along. Margaret sat beside him, her own voice choked with emotion. "She always said that teaching was planting seeds that would bloom long after she was gone," she said softly. "It seems she was right once again." Asher nodded, gently running his fingers over the glass of the picture frame, as if he could touch the smiling face of his former teacher. "It's as if she's still taking care of people," he murmured, "through connections we didn't even know existed." In that moment, as the twins' laughter echoed through the house, Asher finally understood the sense of familiarity he had felt since his first meeting with Lucy and Leah. It wasn't just coincidence or fate. It was Evelyn Carter, continuing to bring people together and transform lives, even after she was gone. The revelation about Evelyn Carter had transformed something in the relationship between Asher and the Morales family. What was once a connection based on circumstance and kindness now took on the contours of destiny. During the night, Asher barely slept, tossing and turning in bed as memories of his childhood and the teacher who had changed his life came back in waves. He remembered what he was like at 10, a rich but lonely boy, with always absent parents and a constant anger that manifested in behavioral problems at school. All previous teachers had given up on him, labeling him troubled or spoiled. All except Evelyn Carter. She saw beyond the rebellious facade. "You are not your anger, Asher," she would say. "You are what you choose to do with it." She stayed after school to help him with extra lessons, not as punishment, but as an opportunity. She sent notes of encouragement when he tried. Once, when she found out he would spend his birthday alone because his parents were on a business trip, she showed up at his house with a small cake and a book as a gift. It was she who planted the first seeds of his passion for business, encouraging him to turn his energy into creative projects. "You have a brilliant mind for solving problems, Asher," she would say. "Use it to build, not to destroy." And now, by some miracle of fate, he was helping her granddaughters. The synchronicity was so perfect it seemed planned by invisible hands. The morning after the discovery, Asher drove to the Morales house earlier than usual. It was Sunday, and the sun had barely risen on the horizon when he parked in front of the small blue house. He stayed in the car for a few minutes, organizing his thoughts and planning what he would say. The night of reflection had brought clarity. It wasn't enough to help with groceries and school tuition. If he really wanted to honor Evelyn's legacy, he had to do more. He had to offer Margaret and the girls a path to true independence. At 7:30, he saw lights turning on in the house. He waited a few more minutes before getting out of the car and walking to the door. He knocked gently, aware that the twins were probably still asleep. Margaret opened the door, already dressed but with her hair still damp from her morning shower. She seemed surprised to see him so early. "Asher, did something happen?" "Nothing wrong," he assured her quickly. "Sorry about the time. Can we talk for a bit?" "I have an idea I'd like to share." Margaret nodded, opening the door wider. "Of course, I just made coffee. The girls are still sleeping." The kitchen was clean and organized, with the morning light streaming through the small window over the sink. The aroma of fresh coffee filled the room. Margaret poured 2 cups and sat at the table, inviting Asher to do the same. "I didn't sleep much last night," she confessed, stirring her coffee. "I kept thinking about the coincidence, or maybe it's not a coincidence. My mom always said the universe has funny ways of connecting people." Asher smiled, warming his hands on the cup. "I thought the same thing, and I spent the night remembering how your mother changed my life, how she believed in me when no one else did." He paused, taking a sip of coffee as he organized his thoughts. "Margaret, I know you're working at the clinic, but I've noticed the hours are difficult, especially for taking care of the girls." She nodded, sighing. "The shifts are tough. I often have to leave them with the neighbor when I work late." "It's not ideal, but I spoke with a friend last night," Asher interrupted gently. "Sophia owns Riverstone, that restaurant near the Central Park." Margaret's eyes widened slightly. Riverstone was known as an elegant but welcoming establishment, not overly luxurious, but definitely several steps above the places where she might expect to work. "So her restaurant needs a waitress for the day shift," Asher continued. "Business hours, Sundays off, and the salary is—" He mentioned a figure that made Margaret almost choke on her coffee. "Plus tips, which are usually generous." Margaret placed her cup on the table carefully, as if afraid her trembling hands would drop it. That's more than I make at the clinic," she said finally, her voice low. "Much more. I told Sophia about you, about your experience as a nurse's aide, about your attention to detail and people skills. She was interested." "But I've never worked in restaurants," Margaret protested weakly. "I don't know if I'm qualified." "She's willing to train the right person," Asher explained, "and she believes, as I do, that people skills are more important than technical experience. You'll learn what you need to quickly." Margaret looked out the window for a moment, as if trying to process the information. The sun was now shining brighter, creating golden patterns on the kitchen floor. "The hours would allow me to take the girls to school and be home when they get back," she murmured, more to herself than to Asher. "We wouldn't need the neighbor anymore." She turned to Asher, her clear eyes studying him intensely. "Why are you doing this? You've already done so much for us." Asher hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Your mother taught me that opportunities change lives. I'm not offering charity, Margaret. I'm offering a chance, the same chance Evelyn gave me when she believed in me." Silence hung between them for a few moments, broken only by the ticking of the clock on the wall and the distant sound of birds in the yard. "If you're interested," Asher added softly, "Sophia would like to talk to you tomorrow." Margaret no longer hesitated. Her shoulders straightened, her chin lifted slightly, a gesture Asher had noticed in the twins when they made an important decision. "I accept," she said firmly. "I'll accept anything that allows me to care for my girls with dignity." Her eyes shone with determination, a spark that went beyond financial relief. It was the same expression Asher had seen so many times on Evelyn's face, the unwavering conviction that the future could be better than the past. "I accept," she repeated, her voice stronger now, "and I will work hard to deserve this opportunity." Asher smiled, feeling that sense of purpose that had become increasingly familiar since he met the twins. "Sophia will love to meet you," he said, "and the girls will be so proud." As if summoned by his words, hurried footsteps were heard in the hallway. A moment later, Lucy and Leah appeared at the kitchen door, hair disheveled and pajamas wrinkled, but with radiant smiles upon seeing Asher. "You came for breakfast with us?" Lucy asked, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Can we make pancakes?" Leah added, already opening the refrigerator without waiting for an answer. The serious conversation gave way to the organized chaos of a Sunday breakfast. As he helped the twins measure flour for the pancakes, Asher watched Margaret. There was a new lightness in her movements, as if an invisible weight had been partially lifted from her shoulders. It was just the beginning, he thought, just the beginning. The following weeks brought remarkable changes for the Morales family. Margaret started working at Riverstone and, to everyone's relief, adapted quickly. Her experience with patients at the clinic had prepared her well for dealing with demanding customers, and her attentive nature made her notice details that others overlooked. In less than 2 weeks, she already had regular customers who specifically requested her table. The new job not only improved the family's financial situation, but also gave Margaret back something she had lost: confidence. Each day at the restaurant reinforced her ability to learn new skills, connect with people, and rebuild her life. The twins were also flourishing. With their mother more present and less stressed, they became even more cheerful and curious. At school, Mrs. Peterson commented on the remarkable progress both were showing. Lucy was reading above her grade level, and Leah was demonstrating a special talent for math. Asher remained present, but in a different way now. Instead of being the family's lifeline, he was increasingly becoming a friend, a mentor, a constant presence that complemented, but did not replace, the renewed stability Margaret was able to provide. On a July afternoon, almost a month after Margaret started her new job, Asher invited her for coffee after her shift at the restaurant. The twins were at a trial ballet class, another new thing that the stable income had made possible. They sat in a quiet coffee shop near the restaurant. Margaret looked different, the elegant Riverstone uniform, her hair in an elaborate bun, even her posture had changed. There was a recovered dignity in every gesture. "The girls can't stop talking about ballet," she commented, smiling over the rim of her cup. Leah has already decided she's going to be a ballerina, at least for this week, Asher laughed. And Lucy? Lucy says she wants to be a writer and a dancer, and an astronaut, and a vet, all at the same time. They both laughed, sharing that intimate knowledge of the twins' personalities. The afternoon sun streamed through the large windows of the coffee shop, creating a golden, peaceful atmosphere. "They're dreaming again," Asher observed. "It's good to see that." Margaret nodded, her eyes softening. "For a while, I think they forgot how to dream. They were too busy trying to survive." She paused, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. "We all were." Asher watched her profile for a moment, the determined chin, so much like Evelyn's, the clear eyes that had been passed down to her granddaughters. "Margaret," he began, his voice more serious. "I wanted to talk to you about something important." She turned to him, attentive. "Your mother gave me something that changed my life," Asher said, the words coming out slowly, laden with emotion. "She gave me more than math or English lessons. She gave me the belief that I could be more, do more. Now I want to do the same for your daughters." He paused, taking a deep breath. "They will get an education. They will have opportunities. I want to set up an educational fund for Lucy and Leah to ensure they can attend good schools, college, whatever they choose." Margaret's eyes widened, her cup stopping halfway to the table. Asher, it's not charity," he interrupted gently. "It's an investment. In their future, in the world they will help build. And it's a way of paying back what your mother did for me." Margaret carefully placed the cup on the table, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "They would have chances I never had," she murmured. "They could choose their own paths, instead of being limited by circumstances." "Exactly," Asher agreed. "I'm not saying money solves everything. You've proven that by raising two wonderful girls in the most difficult circumstances. But it removes obstacles, it opens doors." Margaret looked out the window for a moment, watching people pass on the sidewalk. When she turned back to Asher, a single tear was rolling down her face. "My mother always said that education could save a life," she said softly, her voice choked with emotion. "She said knowledge was the one thing no one could ever take from you, once you had it." She discreetly wiped the tear with the tip of her finger. "She would be so proud of you, Asher. So proud of the man you've become." Asher felt a lump in his throat, remembering the grey-haired teacher with the kind smile who had seen potential in the troubled boy he once was. "I hope so," he replied simply. "I hope so." Sitting there in the golden afternoon light, they shared more than coffee. They shared the certainty that Evelyn Carter's legacy lived on, flowing through generations like a river that finds new paths but never stops running. Lucy and Leah would have opportunities, they would have choices. They would have the chance to discover who they really were, without the limitations that poverty imposes. And maybe one day, in some way, they would continue this cycle of generosity and transformation that their grandmother had started so many years ago. The months passed like pages of a book turned by the wind. Summer gave way to autumn, which yielded to winter, and now spring was coloring the world again. Almost a year had passed since that first morning when Asher had seen two blonde girls with empty lunchboxes. The little blue house on the quiet street was no longer the same. On the outside, the transformation was subtle. A fresh coat of paint on the walls, colorful flowers in the front garden, a handmade sign on the door that read, "The Morales Home," in hand-painted letters. But it was inside that the change truly manifested. On a sunny Saturday in May, Asher parked in front of the house as he regularly did. Before he even knocked on the door, he could feel the difference. Sounds escaped through the open windows, soft music from the radio, crystal clear laughter, the clinking of utensils in the kitchen, and the smells. The sweet aroma of freshly baked cake mixed with cinnamon filled the air, making his stomach rumble in anticipation. He knocked on the door, 3 light taps, his private code, hurried footsteps, excited voices arguing over who would open it, and then the door swung open to reveal Lucy and Leah, identical smiles lighting up their faces. "You're just in time," exclaimed Lucy, pulling him by the hand. "Si, we just took the cake out of the oven." "It's banana cinnamon," Leah added, grabbing his other hand. "It's Grandma's recipe." Asher let himself be led inside, observing the changes that continued to emerge with each visit. The living room, once nearly empty, was now a cozy space. The old sofa had gained colorful cushions, there were soft rugs on the floor, and a new bookshelf housed books, many books of all kinds. Some for Margaret, others for the twins, storybooks, illustrated encyclopedias, recipe books. In the center of the room, a coffee table displayed a vase of fresh flowers, and scattered around it were open notebooks, colored pencils and dolls, signs of a house truly lived in, not just occupied. "Come see what I wrote," Lucy requested, running to grab a purple-covered notebook. "It's a story about a girl who can talk to cats." "And I made drawings for her story," Leah added, showing a sheet where an orange cat was talking to a blonde-haired girl who looked suspiciously like her. From the kitchen, Margaret appeared, drying her hands on a floral apron. Her hair was in a loose braid, and there was a smudge of flour on her cheek. She looked younger, lighter. "Welcome to the creative chaos," she joked and smiling. "Lucy has decided she's going to be a writer, and Leah is determined to illustrate her sister's books. We're in the middle of producing the first bestseller. It's going to be called The Girl Who Understood Meows," Lucy informed with professional seriousness. "It has 12 chapters and 23 drawings," Leah added, not wanting to be left behind. Asher laughed, sitting on the sofa as the twins settled on either side of him, eager to show their creations. Lucy began to read her story with the confidence of an experienced author, while Leah showed the illustrations at the appropriate moments. The coordination between them was perfect, with no need for words, that silent language only twins seemed to share. The story was surprisingly complex for 6-year-olds. It involved a protagonist who discovered her special power of communicating with cats after rescuing an abandoned kitten, and used this gift to reunite lost pets with their families. "And the best cat of all was named Asher," Lucy concluded with a mischievous smile, "because he was the kindest and helped all the other cats. He's orange with green eyes," Leah explained, showing the drawing of a particularly majestic cat. "Like yours." Asher felt that now familiar tightness in his chest, a mix of pride, gratitude, and affection that always accompanied him on his visits to the Morales home. "That's the best story I've ever heard," he said sincerely. "You two are incredible." Across the room, in a corner that was previously empty, Asher noticed something new, a small table with a child's chair, where a doll sat before an open book. "What do we have there?" he asked, curious. "That's Amelia's school," Leah explained, getting up to adjust the doll's position. "I'm teaching her to read. Is she a good student?" Asher asked, following the girl to the little corner. "So-so," Leah replied, adjusting the doll's arms on the book. "Sometimes she gets distracted looking out the window. But we're on chapter 3 already." With the seriousness of a dedicated teacher, Leah pointed to the words in the children's book, reading slowly for the brown-haired doll in a blue dress. "See? This is how you read this word. Let's repeat it together." Lucy approached, shaking her head. "She does that all the time. She spends hours playing school." "Grandma was a teacher," Leah recalled, glancing briefly at Evelyn's picture frame, which now held a place of honor on the main bookshelf. "I want to be just like her when I grow up." "And you will be a wonderful teacher," Asher assured her, touched by how Evelyn's memories continued to live on through her granddaughters. The smell of fresh coffee joined the aroma of cake, and soon Margaret was calling them to the kitchen. The table was set with a care that spoke of renewed pride, matching plates, napkins folded into creative shapes, the cake in the center displaying a perfectly spread frosting. The kitchen, like the rest of the house, had been transformed. The walls, once a faded white, now sported a soft shade of yellow. Small plants grew in pots on the windowsill. On the refrigerator, drawings and notes were held up by decorative magnets. There was a new painting on the wall, a simple painting of a sunflower field signed by Margaret. "You've started painting again?" Asher observed, noticing the signature. Margaret blushed slightly, serving the cake. "I started attending a community class on Tuesday nights. Nothing professional, just to relax." "It's beautiful," he praised sincerely. "I didn't know you painted." "Mommy won contests when she was young," Lucy informed proudly. "Grandma kept her trophies. They were just school competitions, Margaret downplayed, but her smile revealed her pleasure at the recognition. I put it aside when the girls were born. There was no time, or energy, or money for paint, Leah added with the typical frankness of children. Margaret laughed, ruffling her daughter's hair. That too. But now. Her gaze swept over the cozy kitchen, her smiling daughters, finally landing on Asher. Now we're reclaiming parts of ourselves we had forgotten. The meaning of those words hung in the air, sweeter than the cake they shared. It wasn't just about painting, it was about dreams, identity, possibilities. The house that once served only as a shelter was now a space of growth and discovery. As they ate, the twins talked excitedly about the end of the school year, just a week away. They told him about the performance their class would give, the awards that would be handed out, their plans for the summer vacation. Mrs. Peterson said I can read a poem in front of everyone, exclaimed Lucy, nearly bouncing in her chair with excitement. I wrote it myself. And I'm going to play the triangle in the closing song, Leah added. I have the most important part. Margaret exchanged a knowing look with Asher. We have two little performers here. Not shy at all. How could they be? He replied. They have the genes of a teacher and an artist. The rest of the afternoon passed in a comfortable mix of activities. Asher helped Lucy review her poem for the presentation. Then, he sat on the living room floor to watch Leah demonstrate her skills with the musical triangle. Later, the four of them played cards at the kitchen table, laughing at the elaborate strategies the twins invented to try to cheat. As the sun began to set, casting golden shadows through the house, Asher realized how those walls now contained much more than furniture. They contained memories, dreams, plans for the future. Hope, which was once just an occasional visitor, now resided there permanently. On the morning of the last day of school, Asher arrived early. It was a tradition now to be present for all the important moments in the twins' lives. The girls spotted him as soon as they got out of Margaret's car, running towards him in their pristine uniforms and hair carefully styled in identical braids. "Today's the big day," Lucy announced, twirling to show off the special dress she would wear for the performance, carefully folded in her backpack. "We practiced the song 1,000 times, Leah added, making the motion of playing the triangle in the air. "It's going to be perfect." Margaret approached more slowly, smiling. She looked elegant in her restaurant uniform. She was now an assistant manager, a recent promotion they had celebrated with a special dinner. "They barely slept from so much excitement," she commented, adjusting the collar of Leah's blouse. "I woke them up at 5 and they were already ready to go." "Understandable," Asher replied. "It's a big day." Margaret checked her watch. "I need to rush to work. I'll be back at 3 for the performance." She hugged her daughters quickly. "Be good and rock it, my stars." As she walked away, the twins exchanged conspiratorial glances that Asher knew well by now. "We have something for you," said Lucy, opening her backpack. "An end-of-year gift," Leah explained, her eyes shining with anticipation. Lucy pulled out a blue envelope, decorated with drawings of silver stars. There was something different about this envelope, a special care, an attention to detail that spoke of hours dedicated to its creation. "This is to say, thank you," said Lucy, holding out the envelope with both hands. "For everything," Leah added, her voice soft but intense. Asher accepted the envelope, noticing how his hands trembled slightly. After almost a year, he was still surprised by how deeply these small displays of affection affected him. "Can I open it now?" The twins nodded in unison, watching him with attentive eyes. They stood closer to each other, as they always did when they were nervous or emotional. Careful not to damage the drawings on the edges, Asher opened the envelope. Inside was a carefully folded sheet of paper. As he unfolded it, he felt his breath catch for a moment. It was a much more elaborate drawing than the first one they had given him months ago. In the center, there were the three of them, he and the twins, sitting on the same bench where they had shared their first snack. But the drawing contained so much more. In the background, the school, the blue house, the restaurant where Margaret worked. In each corner, small scenes depicted moments they had shared, playing cards in the kitchen, reading books in the living room, at the park feeding ducks. And at the top, in colorful and careful letters, the message, "Our best friend. Thank you for coming into our lives." In the bottom corner, 3 signatures, Lucy, Leah, and surprisingly, Margaret. Their mother had participated in this special gift. Asher felt a lump in his throat, an emotion so intense that for a moment he feared he wouldn't be able to speak. The drawing captured everything, not just moments, but transformations, journeys, the intertwining of lives that once ran separately. "You guys," he began, struggling to find words. "You are incredible." The twins smiled, those identical smiles that uniquely lit up their eyes. "Mommy helped with the letters," Lucy explained. "And with the details of the house," Leah added, "but we did the rest." "We worked on it for 2 weeks," Lucy confessed, bouncing on her heels with pride. "It's perfect," Asher said, holding the paper as if holding a piece of everything worth living for. Because that's exactly what it was. That simple drawing contained the essence of what truly mattered: connection, growth, hope, love. The school bell rang, calling the students inside. The twins hugged Asher quickly. "See you later," they said together, running towards the entrance. "Don't forget, 3 o'clock. Wouldn't miss it for the world," he promised, watching them disappear into the building. He stood there for a moment, looking again at the drawing in his hands. A year ago, he was a rich but lonely man, surrounded by possessions but lacking purpose. Now, thanks to 2 empty lunchboxes and the legacy of a teacher who had believed in him decades ago, he had found the true meaning of wealth. Carefully, he folded the drawing and placed it close to his heart, in the inner pocket of his jacket. Later, it would be framed and take the place of honor in his office next to the first drawing he had received. Walking back to his car with the morning sun warming his face, Asher carried with him not just a piece of paper with colorful drawings, but the quiet certainty that he had found his place in the world, not in the glass and steel skyscrapers where his businesses thrived, but in the heart of a small family that reminded him, every day, of what truly made life worth living. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like, because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.